I was one of those guys going around saying that we shouldn't raise the debt ceiling without significant cuts. And we saw what happened because we didn't get significant cuts. And I'm all in favor of rebuilding our infrastructure and making our bridges safe. We had a bridge in Minnesota that collapsed years ago, and that's become the poster child for our failing infrastructure. We have millions of bridges that work just fine. But the point is, what I don't get is how we're going to pay for this. We continue to borrow and spend money. We've got a stimulus 2 coming up that we need to talk about here a little bit to see if it's feasible and how it's going to be paid for. But I do agree with Mr. Cummings that it doesn't matter really where these regulations came from. The fact is that there's too darn many, and in the American Jobs Creators Tour and my stops across Tennessee, the #1 complaint and impediment to job growth, according to the 30-plus industries I've visited, is that we need to get government out of the way. And we're simply not doing that with this. We're looking at 219 new regulations by this President costing over $38 billion, and this new plan that was just proposed is going to show an increase of 10,000 new regulators a year. Certainly that doesn't seem to be solving the problems that we're set out to do. As far as paying for this, Dr. Boucher, you said that it's time to increase taxes on the rich, or we're going to get back into this let's spread the wealth mentality to get ourselves out of the problem. How exactly do you think that is going to solve the problem? And as far as the taxes on the rich and the removal of the deduction in the charitable contribution area, can you comment on that and how you think that's going to solve the problem?
Thank you. As many of us have talked about today, we clearly have a long-term deficit problem. We have a gap. We have a challenge there. One of the things that we've seen over the past few decades is that America has become a fairly low-tax country, and one of the things that we've done is that we've extended these tax cuts on the wealthiest.
Oh, let me interrupt. Do we tax too little, or do we spend too much as a government? I mean, look at our deficit.
Exactly. Relative to other countries, we are a relative low-tax country, and we are not a relative high spender.
Are we a high-spending country?
No.
We're not?
No.
Well, how did we get in
not
this
relative
mess?
to our GDP and relative to other countries. No. I mean, I would be more than happy after this to send you a series of charts that document this.
Do you think that taxing or closing the loophole on charitable contributions is going to hurt charities?
That is only for families, for wealthy families, and I think over the long run, no. I mean, I think that what is important—
Wealthy families over what amount? 250,000?
250,000 for a married couple.
That's a wealthy family. Who do you think usually gives the most to charities?
It is a wealthy family. Those are families in the very top of the United States income distribution. Those are families that have benefited from economic growth over the past few decades, while other families have not. So they have benefited more from the 2000s, more during the 1980s, more during the 1990s than middle-class and lower-income families. So asking them to pay their fair share does seem like an appropriate place if we are all focused on closing that deficit. It has to come from somewhere. It can't come from families that have not seen income gains.
Mr. Schiff, do you have a comment on that?
I'd like to ask Dr. Boucher, what percentage of my income do you think the government should take? What would be fair?
Make sure your mic's on, Mr. Schiff.
Yeah, what percentage of my income should the government take? What do you think would be fair?
I'm not going to give you a number
just give me a guess.
Here. Yeah.
Well, what do you think would be fair? You say I'm not paying enough taxes. How high should my taxes be? What percentage of my income should be taken away from me by the government?
We have a progressive income tax
right, but
structure.
Just what do you think would half? 60%, 70%? How much should they take?
Wow, that is so far beyond.
Well, we're going to wait.
But I'm just
hang on.
Let me say that taxing the rich.
The gentleman from Tennessee has the time.
Yeah, I'll just interrupt. Taxing the rich is a great idea till the rich run out of money, and that seems to be the
my problem
process.
is I'm already almost paying
hang on
half my income in taxes right now.
Hang on a second.
That is impossible.
No, it's not impossible.
Correct.
No, it's not.
Okay,
you want to see my tax returns?
Mr. Chairman, let's shift gears for 1 second because this is going to go on forever.
35.
Dr. Boucher, do you feel that government, Dr. Boucher, do you feel that government jobs create revenue? And I think you said that the stimulus 1 had the majority of jobs created were private sector jobs. Do public jobs create revenue, or do they just cost the taxpayers money?
Recovery dollars that have gone, dollars that go on to communities to say build a bridge, You hire engineers, typically in the private sector, some in the public, some in the private. You hire contractors, you hire people that do concrete. You hire a lot of folks in the private sector, and then that has spillover effects. So that if you hire that person who has the concrete, and then they go and they have more money, and so they spend it in their community, that's how those private sector jobs are created, both directly and indirectly.
Mr. Schiff, do you feel that's a good return on your investment to spend those tax dollars that way? I mean, what's your chance of making a profit?
Well, first I want to point out that 99% of my income is taxed at the marginal rate. So the marginal rate is my rate. And if the Federal Government has taken 35% of my income, and then another 3% for Medicare, that's 38, and then when I have the State of Connecticut now almost 7%, over 45% of my income in tax, and that's before I pay any property taxes or sales taxes or anything else like that. And if you raise my taxes much more, that's it. I'm done. I'm already moving businesses to Singapore, moving businesses to the Caribbean to try to go to lower tax jurisdictions. We are not a low tax country. We are a high tax country, and we're a much higher tax country than we used to be in the past by far. And I don't remember what your other question was.
Well, I'm out of time, but I'm just going to close with the fact that we continue to spend money at an unprecedented rate. And as Mr. Cummings said, I think people were very shocked at the debt ceiling debate. But my stance, and at least from what I gather from the folks from Tennessee, is they're shocked that we once again increase our debt ceiling by $2.4 trillion and waited over cuts over 10 years that they don't have any faith that's going to happen. So I would say that the shock and outrage with what happened up here was more the fact that we allowed this to happen, that we once again spent our children and grandchildren's money, and I yield.